ॐ साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वप्रचोदयात्। ॐ साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वप्रचोदयात्। ॐ साईश्वराय विद्महे सत्यदेवाय धीमहि तन्नः सर्वप्रचोदयात्। या देवी सर्वभूतेषु तुष्टिरूपेण संस्थिता नमस्तस्यै 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 नमो नमः। या देवी सर्वभूतेषु तुष्टिरूपेण संस्थिता नमस्तस्यै 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 नमो नमः। या देवी सर्वभूतेषु तुष्टिरूपेण संस्थिता नमस्तस्यै 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 नमो नमः।
Namaste. Welcome to Kaivalya Yoga Gurukulam for another evening of delightful satsang, where we lose ourselves in the divine consciousness, exploring our own reality in the name and form of Mahaparashakti, Sri Devi, through this stotra called the Sri Khadgamala stotra. As always, let us begin the satsang with a prayerful invocation of this divine energy that resides in our Muladhara, Lord Ganesha, so that he clears all the obstacles, helps our mind focus, helps us in comprehending, understanding, and getting things more clearer about these higher dimensions, where all these divine energies are waiting to serve us, help us realize our true divine spiritual nature.
ॐ गं गणपतये नमः। 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 ॐ गं गणपतये मातङ्गवदना आनन्दसदना मातङ्गवदना आनन्दसदना मातङ्गवदना आनन्दसदना महादेव शिव शम्भो नन्दन महादेव शिव शम्भो नन्दन मातङ्गवदना आनन्दसदना मातङ्गवदना आनन्दसदना ॐ गं गणपतये नमः 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 मातङ्गवदना आनन्दसदना मातङ्गवदना आनन्दसदना महादेव शिव शम्भो नन्दन महादेव शिव शम्भो नन्दन मातङ्गवदना आनन्दसदना मातङ्गवदना आनन्दसदना मायाविनाशक मूषिकवाहन मायाविनाशक मूषिकवाहन माता महेश्वरी भवानी नन्दन माता महेश्वरी भवानी नन्दन महागणपते मङ्गलचरणा महागणपते मङ्गलचरणा महागणपते मङ्गलचरणा महागणपते मङ्गलचरणा मातङ्गवदना आनन्दसदना मातङ्गवदना आनन्दसदना ॐ गं गणपतये नमः 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 ॐ गं गणपतये नमः
For those of you who have just joined, Namaste and welcome to Kaivalya Yoga Gurukulam. We shall continue learning this divine secrets of the Sri Chakra as the universal consciousness that we understand as Mother Goddess, the Parashakti, as she reveals it to us in all humility and reverence. This is but one small perspective to the hundreds and thousands of perspectives and layers of truths hidden in these very Shaktis that are being revealed to us. But nevertheless, we take the baby steps, hold the hands of these Shaktis, allowing them to reveal more and more of who they are and how divine they are and how much of potency lies in each of these Shaktis. So let us go in this journey so far, and I will quickly go through this so that we are in touch with what we have done so far. we have done the attraction of the mind, Akarshana Shakti. All of these are Akarshana Shaktis of the Devi. And then from Manas, we went to Buddhi, Buddhya Akarshana, the attraction of intuition and intellect. And then we went to Ahankara, Ahankara, the ego that lies, the I-ness in us. So the Ahankara Akarshani. And then we studied the, we are finishing up today, I think, with these 5 elements, the 5 tanmatras as they are called, the 5 subtle energies from which these gross elements such as space, air and all of this evolved. So from sound came space. And the next one is sparsha. From sparsha came vayu or wind or the sense of touch. So from these energies, fundamental cosmic energies, we got the 5 elements. And from this 5 elements, this body and all of this creation that you see is formed. Then came rupa. A form is an energy. So the form took place as fire. And that gave the ability for us to see forms. Rupa Akarshani. We touched upon this a little bit in the last couple of classes. Then comes the Rasakarshani. Rasakarshani is taste. The Akarshana Shakti that is exhibited by Devi in the form of taste. So taste is also a divine element of Devi. 1 second. Are we okay with sound? Okay. You see, when we talk about Akarshana Shakti and Devi, each of these is the same manifestation of the Supreme Consciousness. And therefore, when we need to understand this, there is an ability to communicate with these elements. Perhaps we have understood this, perhaps not. But today, a few minutes ago, as I was thinking and gathering my thoughts, I thought it is very important for us to see the beauty in this, in Sanatana Dharma, the way the rishis gave us, the way Adi Shankara explains this, the way the yogis and scholars and all of them have explained this to us, the secret of the Sri Chakra and the concept of mantras and all of this. The whole idea behind this, bringing the bhava of bhakti. Why is devotion considered a very powerful path? Why is it considered a very sacred and perhaps even easy path? Because in devotion, there is what we call, you establish the link with the divine energy in them through communication. What kind of communication? Through the language that you understand, that you tune into, right? So in olden days, in ancient days, Sanskrit was the language that was spoken. Sanskrit was prevalent, and therefore people taught in Sanskrit, spoke in Sanskrit, and therefore the mantras were also in Sanskrit. Now Sanskrit, therefore, you can't say today is English, let me do it in English. You can. That helps to some extent. But when we want to go deeper, then you speak the language of the gods. And the language of the gods is Sanskrit. Now, I'm not saying this because I am from India. Please don't mistake this. This is not a fanatic kind of presentation. But the sounds of Sanskrit are so divine, and it is so deep in trying to understand. I'm trying to gather my thoughts and some material to present that before I even teach the Veda classes, right? That's another parallel thing we have just started. But instead of just teaching one mantra after the other, I wanted to set the basic foundation for what is this language? How is it impacting every sound that we utter? How is it impacting our nerves, our nervous system and brain and so on? And there's so much to read, and there's so much, and there's a whole ocean out there. Nevertheless, Sanskrit is therefore a language of the gods. It means a sound that is cosmic in nature. And those sounds are collected, organized into a meaningful language and given to us. A lot of hard work has already been done by enlightened souls, handed down to us. So do not just consider Sanskrit as some mantra. I can't deal with this mantra. I'm just not going to do it. I'll just talk to God in my own language. Yes, you can. So there is that element of bhakti which is very, very powerful. But for our emotions and feelings to be so acutely powerful, so divine, we practice these mantras, we practice sadhana, and all of this lifestyle that we are talking about, meditation, japa, sadhana, mantra chanting, all of this helps the mind to get tuned into that principle, and then we begin to talk. Then feelings come, right? Even bhajans, when we sing, bhajo, gananayaka, gajabadana, all of these are divine words, just in Sanskrit, right? So all of these bring out emotions as we bring in melody and rhythm into that. And then what happens is you are establishing a communication. So one side is Sanskrit, right? But the important part here, but I want you to understand, is communication. If you take a saint like Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, many of you from India know him. For those of you who are not, he was a great saint, a modern day saint. Like Paramahamsa Yogananda, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa was a little before him, Sri Ramana Maharishi. All these are great saints in the last couple of 100 years. So, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, how did he communicate to Devi? How did he bring out this essence of Devi and attained Nirvikalpa Samadhi? In other words, he attained the formlessness. He understood it. He got it. He attained Kaivalya. How did he do that? Now, that was bhakti, pure emotion and devotion. But if we sit back and say, but Ramakrishna Paramahamsa didn't have all this Khadgamala stotras and he didn't do all this, he just sat and prayed and he got it, so why can't I do that? Yes, you can. But do you know, can you fathom the devotion, the pain, the anguish, the yearning that Ramakrishna Paramahamsa went through every day and every night for months and years at a stretch? He would sit in front of the statue of Kali and forget to eat, forget to sleep. He would be lost. Say, why don't you reveal yourself to me? He got so attached. He needed a guru to come and hit him on this third eye and break open his third eye, because the fruit was ready. It was ripe. It was ready to fall off the branch. So that's a beautiful story to understand, but don't forget the intensity of sadhana that went along with it. And then came wisdom and bhakti and all of that. So bhakti, when it is intense like that, yes, then you don't need any mantras. Now it is up to each of us to ask ourselves if we have that kind of bhakti. And how do we cultivate that bhakti? Right? You can't fall in love with a God. It has to happen. Grace has to come. The doors have to open. And therefore, for those of us who don't feel it right away, then we chant, we pray, we enter into sadhana, and then the divine comes and gets hold of us. There is an element of divine grace. It might appear different from us, and that's okay at this point. Okay? It is a part of us, but let us not lose ourselves in that intellectual inquiry. There is definitely a divine grace that comes and holds our hand and guides us towards itself in the name and the form of choice that is right for each one of us. Spiritual path is not a wholesale market. It is a very individualized personal path. And yet there is satsang in it. In other words, we can get together and talk about our experiences, inspire each other, learn together such as these, and then sit back home and use that inspiration to open the doors within. So the element in the beauty here is the power to communicate. Because in the last few classes, if you go back to the slides, you will see we are talking of taste. What is taste? I mean, how do I communicate to taste? How do I communicate to this one here, as you see, form, right? Sparsha, rupa, rasa, shabda, sound. What is communication to that? I mean, the modern science, the modern mind, there is nothing in our modern education that even teaches us remotely that possibility to communicate, because we treat these as some random energies in the universe and so on and so forth, as if it is different from a consciousness that has produced it, even if you believe in this infinite consciousness and all that. it is very hard for us to fathom that this is that divine energy. And you can, and because it is consciousness in a different form, you can still communicate to that form. It doesn't appeal to the logic mind, but you don't miss that beauty of it all, because that ability to communicate with an idol in front. That is why not many people will understand the profound thinking that goes behind idol worship. It is not some foolish blind people who said, okay, let's put a diagram and say, okay, this is God, now worship. Or built a stone statue and say, okay, this is God, worship. The point there was, and these are the same people who had, this magnificent geometry and architecture and astrology and all of those in their fingertips, right? Very intelligent, very evolved community of people. They also gave us this. Why? Because they knew that whether you communicate to a piece of cloth, whether you communicate to a flower in your hand, whether you communicate to a piece of stone, whether you communicate to water or the sun, whether you communicate to the wind, you are actually in communion with the divine. How powerful is that? And therefore, when we study the Sri Chakra and we understand each of these energies, remember that when I am eating my food and taste buds spring up, there is a Devi coming and talking to us at that point. There is a communication being established. Where do we go wrong then? We go wrong because we don't understand that these divine moments, we take it for granted and we say, I like this, I don't like this, and I become slave to some random imagined energy called taste, and I'm fighting a shadow. Whereas the real taste is waiting to communicate to us and communicating to us every time. We miss that. We miss the opportunity there. How do I explain this? Let me explain it how I understood this over the years. Bhagwan Baba had devotees ranging from anywhere on any given day. Normally, in the early 80s, it would be 3,000, 2,000 people at a minimum sitting for his darshan. At a very minimum, the way I saw him, and I remember that. From 2,000 to 3,000 people, it would go anywhere between that to 100,000 people, 150,000 people for one particular event, for one particular darshan when he would step out. So he was constantly in demand. Everyone tuned into him as he would step out for every action of his, because they found that there was a link established, a communication taking place. You have to listen to the stories of each one of them. You may think, oh, this was just in the imagination. It doesn't matter. For them, it was not imagination. For them, it was a heart-to-heart communication that was happening. A look or not a look, avoiding all of that. If you ask the students, they know even better. But what I did was, I took that for granted. Because I can speak for myself, I can't speak for students in general. It's not fair. Let me speak for myself. As I would sit and watch Baba every day, morning, afternoon, night, morning, evening, every day, so many times in a day, all these divine communications were missed by me. There were so many, many more words he would have spoken to me, so many acts, so many signs he would have given me when I was singing perhaps. I don't know. I was so caught up in my own little world of I, me and mine, that I know for sure that I missed perhaps 90% of all that communications, that he was constantly exuding from him. His ability to communicate to everyone at the same time was incredible. One has to experience to understand this. Otherwise, it's not even possible. So I'm not going to try to convince anyone about this. But what I'm trying to say is, the divine was communicating, and yet I took it for granted, and therefore I missed the communication. But I still had darshan. I was looking at Swami today, what Swami robe is wearing, who's talking to Swami, whom is he going to pick up for interviews today. And we get into another layer of observing him, taking for granted his divinity and all of that. This is what happens to us almost every moment when all these tanmatras, shabda, sparsha, rupa, rasa, and gandha, as we'll come across. In other words, sound, touch, taste, form, and smell, and all these are constantly speaking to us. Who is speaking through this form? It is the divine Devi herself. That is why in Sri Chakra we are worshipping them, because we want to once again remind ourselves, wait a minute, this taste of mine is Akarshana Shakti of Devi herself. So let me talk to her, and she might herself open the doors and not put the veil of Maya, but then pull me out of that and say, okay, child, I know you're yearning for me. Come, I'll take you away from these little toys of ice creams and cakes, and I'll give you the real sweet, right? That grace is what we need to invoke. And in order to establish that inner connection, I start saying, let me control my tongue. Let me watch what I eat. Let me become mindful. When I become mindful, I begin to pay attention to messages that come to me through these. The way, you might think I'm crazy, but my only way to share is my personal, how I look at it, right? The way I understand it, anytime I meditate, I sit, close my eyes, and I just allow all my senses to be in the moment. In other words, what are the sounds that is coming through my ears at this point? It's very easy for me to say, I don't want any sounds, I want a silence, should I breathe, should I sit? No, we get caught up in that. But when you sit, allow the sounds to enter, listen. You might hear the voice speaking to you through some sound. An intuitive ability to comprehend the inner meaning and the energy of the sounds will develop. Smell. What is it that I'm smelling now? Don't look for meaning in the smell. Just absorb. Be mindful of how's my skin. What kind of, am I feeling a slight breeze? How's the breath that flows in and out? Observe, because in sparsha, when the wind touches your nostrils and goes in and comes out, in that sense of touch, there is Devi communicating to you in that form. That is the beauty of these energies. And therefore, let us not miss the ability to communicate. So Sri Chakra is directly, when you sit there for each petal, you're communicating to each of these energies. And when we do this regularly, we bring all of this back to our conscious mind, say all of this is divine. Every moment there is a communication taking place between me and the divine. And that kind of consciousness sets you on a whole different plane of existence. Then the reality around you begins to change. Where you look, you will see divine energy, because you're trained yourself to communicate. And the grace, Devi herself, will begin to reveal. So that is the beauty of that. That is the beauty of Sri Chakra. So attraction of taste is also the same thing. She comes through us, talks to us through the food we eat. That doesn't mean we eat anything and everything that we like and without any regularity, and that's when we become mindless. Every time a food touches the tongue, are we mindful? Or are we just watching something on TV and just eating something mindlessly when there is a million communication happening, whatever you call that, so much of communication taking place between the taste buds and you don't. Oh, I have already made up my mind what I like, what do I don't like, and so I just go with what I like and so on. Then I am blocking myself of so many other communications that can happen. Which is why we come back to mindful eating. We do sadhana, we control the tongue, we watch what we eat. Okay, so this is the attitude behind understanding that Devi is all of this. Alright, so thus you understand the sense of taste. Then you become mindful of what goes in. Every time what touches my tongue is going to be an offering to another element of Devi inside. So all of this, it becomes a temple. Pure divine energy begins to. So what happens is, when you do this kind of sadhana, every day in and out, slowly all these divine energies, right from the first chakras we saw, all those Devis, all these divine energies will begin to awaken inside of your body, inside of your mind. They will become what is called sakshatkara. That's why we say sakshatkara prasada siddhyarte jape vinyoga. I want you to manifest for me. That is all I need. I want you to manifest for me, which is why I'm doing this japa. And so when I do that, and when I convert this japa into a mindful lifestyle, then in every aspect she begins to manifest. Every act therefore becomes worthy of being an offering to the divine. Every thought becomes worthy. Now it is very easier said than done. So as I'm saying, I am learning this myself. I am just being an instrument for these ideas to flow, and as you listen, I am listening too. And so these are lessons for you and me, for us to become more and more mindful. We may not be perfect, but that's why she is called the mother. So there is no goddess waiting there to punish you. It makes no sense, because it is her own game. She knows this is playful. But when we don't take her for granted, when we become more mindful and make those attempts, then grace flows and you get help. And you're guided. Of that, I have no doubt. No doubt at all. If there is a yearning, then guidance happens. And what we understand as miracles, because we are still children in this divine consciousness, we say, wow, that was amazing. It was such a beautiful leela, a miracle. But that's a law. It is simply that a door opened and a communication was established. The manifestation, the combination of lights on that Shivalingam on Shivratri night, the picture that I shared, was one of those little communication doors that opened, as far as I'm concerned. It was a beautiful sign, a sign where I knew there was a communication established, and we enjoyed that. So it is like this. Every moment you keep your eyes and ears open, you keep your antennas out, which in other words means mindful sadhana. So sadhana cannot be reduced to 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening. The rest of the day I'm just going to be practical. It doesn't happen like that. Understand that the person coming in front of you is a Devi for a particular reason. Once you begin to understand that, then certain things, you have to argue with that person if argument is necessary. I mean, when I say argue, I mean in a meeting room, you have to forcefully put your point, because you are also the same Devi, right? You have to respect those energies. Internally, you got to say, I don't know what is it that you want to teach me. I welcome. This is how ancient warriors fought. They respected each other and fought. This is how the Mahabharata happens. The disciple bows to the teacher and says, I have learned from you. Help me fight well. The teacher will bless him, and they'll fight each other. Because unfortunately, they went on different sides of. It's a very fascinating concept, but all of that happens in our lives also as well, right? We meet people we don't like. Then you say, how can I see God in them? You don't have to see. That is God. Just as you are God, that is God too. Everything is an aspect of the Devi. So it is in that context we have to understand Sri Chakra. And I thought it was very important that I put back these things in perspective. So taste. And then comes the sense of smell. Gandha Karshini. Gandha is smell. That is also one of the fundamental energies in the cosmos. Smell becomes earth element. Taste becomes water element. Form becomes the fire element. Touch becomes the wind element. Sound becomes the space element. And these 5 elements come together, and we have our body, and we have the trees and the plants and planets and space and time, and all of that is manifested because of the permutation combinations of these 5 gross elements along with the 5 subtle elements. So sense of smell manifests itself into the earth. So our physical body emits smell. Every matter has, smell is a quality of only matter. Water does not have the sense of smell as its intrinsic quality. Air does not have a sense of smell. I mean, you can't smell air, you can't smell water, you can't smell fire, you can't smell space. But when you smell something, you know that there is a matter behind that smell waiting to be discovered. So smell is connected to matter, smell is connected to earth, smell is connected to physicality. So we have talked about this a little more detail in the Kaivalya Marga classes under the earth element. And therefore, what is the earth element, and all of that is linked to the sense of smell. Right? So this sense of smell, this attraction towards smell is also Devi. Which is why when you go to a temple, you light an incense stick, you light a lamp, you have dhupa. That is why lamp is for fire, incense sticks is for perfume, dhupa is for the wind, flowers are representation of space, and then you chant the mantras, sound. All of these fundamental principles of the universe is now used to raise our consciousness. That was the beauty of it. That was the beauty of bringing colors into the temple. That's why last time we spoke about brass and brilliant colors, and the altar is filled because you want to fill your senses with that, shapes and forms and colors. So the form, now you're communicating with that. There is a communication established when you look at simply some beautiful combination of colors. Right? Somewhere some energy guides, let's say Maya, to do this altar that you see in front. Somewhere she is guided. She just says, okay, today I'm going to put some yellow, today I'm going to put a red curtain behind, and I'm going to dress her Devi up in a white sari, and whatever it is she does, she is being guided, right? She is in communication, not in some mystical, she doesn't go into a trance or something and does these altar. She's smiling there. It's not like that, but you understand what I'm saying. She's just doing what she is meant to do and says, all right, how can I make this beautiful? And that's all. When the eye is out of it, oh, I need to be, my signature has to be there somewhere. All that is gone, right? She's just making it nice. So when that happens, more of that energy comes in. And then each of us find a meaning there. And we take home that meaning. So that communication is being re-established. Through what? Through the senses. Form, sight, lamps glowing, there is fire, there is light. You may not smell it, but then there is incense. Not here. But I'm just saying, all of this happens in a temple. So all the 5 elements become divine. And Devi begins to communicate to you through these senses. So that is how we understand these 5 attraction. She attracts you with these. Playfully attracts you, like the mother attracts the child with a toy because she's got the bowl of food in her hand. And so she attracts the child with a toy, and then the child comes for the toy, and then the mother gently lets him play with a little bit of the toy and then slowly puts the toy aside and feeds the baby. That's exactly what is happening here. Okay? So let us begin to understand this divine play of consciousness, knowing that communication can be held, and that is the seeds of bhakti is sown through sadhana. There can be nothing without bhakti. Without bhakti, in other words, without devotion, reverence, a yearning in heart, the heart doesn't open. There is no spirituality, in my opinion. I don't think that can be a dry path of just techniques and how to breathe and how to sit and how to close your eyes and how to chant. Those are also there. Because of reverence, we pay attention to all of that as well. But then that has to be in this context. Gandha Karshani. So the 8 are these. Then comes the 9th one, a very interesting one. Chitta Karshani. Chitta. So now she becomes, Devi is creating the fundamental chitta. What is chitta? Chitta I have written here as mind stuff because I think chitta is one of those words that cannot be translated into English. So we will call it chitta. And for those of us who desperately need an English word to just draw a parallel, I use the word mind stuff loosely. Because in our own Sanskrit writings, in many contexts, chitta is also used as a substitute or as a metaphor for the mind. But chitta here is different from mind. Why? Because right in the beginning, she already said Kama Karshani and indicated mind already there. Kama Karshani, Buddhya Karshani, Ahankara Karshani, And then came all these 5 elements. And then comes Chitta. Right? Why didn't Chitta come before? There is a reason. Why? Because all these 8 that we studied so far, let us see if we get those 8. Kama Karshini, the mind. Buddhya Karshini, the intellect or intuition. Ahankara Karshini, the ego, the I. Shabdha Karshini, sound. Sparsha Karshini, touch. Rupa Karshini, the form. Rasa Karshini, taste. And Gandha Karshini, smell. All these 8 is what forms, they all get together and they are contained in what? All these 8, what are they contained? They're contained in a basket called the Chitta. Now technically you can go back and forth and get into a discussion of what it is. So you can do further research if you will. But my understanding, and I'm happy with this understanding, the Chitta is the basket that contains all of this. But unlike a basket, a regular basket as we understand, a basket that contains all 8 kinds of fruits in it, unlike a regular basket that is inert and doesn't contribute, this basket, this Chitta, not only collects these, but draws impressions from each of these based on our experiences and stores them. So let us say it's a sponge, right? Let us say this basket is made of sponge. And then you put different fruits. Now for some reason, let us imagine these fruits emit some kind of flavor or smell or something from that. The sponge slowly absorbs them all and then creates its own combination of smell and taste and all of that. Chitta is an energy principle that stores every single experience of ours. It is that Chitta that could be understood as the unconscious, subconscious mind that holds all the experiences. But it's not simply an experience. It is the collection of all these elements that we studied and all their combinations. Every time you have said, oh, I don't like this. Every time you said, I like this. Every time you've seen something and attractive. Every time you've seen something that turns you away. Every experience that has registered through these 5 elements. Every experience that has passed through the I-ness. When you say, I have done this, I want this, or I have done that. All of the I. Every intuitive, creative idea. Every desire that has passed through the mind. All of that has left an impression in the Chitta. The Chitta holds those impressions. And if they are constantly done again and again and again and again, then they settle down into what is called samskaras and vasanas. And we carry those as memories. Let's call them memories at this point, because that memory is going to come next. We carry them as that into our next life. And therefore it is rightly said, you and I, we choose our birth. What do you mean by you choose your birth? If you look around you and you're not happy where you are, you might say, I didn't want this. I would have never chosen something like this in my life. I would have chosen a royal family to be born in perhaps, or something like that, right? It is not that kind of conscious way where you decide to choose whether you need to take a cab or take your car out, or whether to watch a movie and which channel to watch, and not that kind of a conscious decision, but the combination, permutation combinations, a collection of all your actions, thoughts and desires that you have indulged in again and again. One random thought doesn't form an impression on the Chitta. One random experience leaves a memory, but that will all go away. We don't carry that. But continuous. That's why we talk about judgments and all that, right? Why was I so forceful about judgment? Because every time you keep reiterating the ideas of good and bad, you become more and more, leave those impressions in the Chitta. And as long as there are impressions in the Chitta, there is 100% assurance of next birth. Unless, of course, there is divine grace, which those kind of things we can't explain. So we leave that aside. So in the Chitta, there is impressions formed, and the combination of those impressions determine the kind of experience that you will continue in another lifetime. Who created that combination? You and I. We create that combination. That is why Baba says, go and do selfless. Do something much bigger than you. Keep doing it, keep doing it. So the memories that are being imprinted in the chitta will prepare for a much beautiful life in the hereafter, and perhaps in the next life you'll be able to carry on that energy to do even more better good, and your consciousness in the next life, if not this life, will experience a far more greater expansion. That is the beauty of this journey of evolution. I wish it was as simple as, oh no, I don't want any more birth, I have given up, I am not going to get any. By wishing if we could get liberation, I wish it was that simple. Then Ramana Maharishi and Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and all these saints wouldn't have done years and years of tapas, austerity, meditation, prayer and penance, and got into that and stayed in that state of mind. Paramahamsa, Yogananda, for example. These are divine examples. And these are examples of people in our lifetime. I wish it was that easy, but it's not. Why? Because whenever we say I, the ahankara karshini forms those impressions in the chitta. This chitta is also divine. This chitta is also divine. And therefore, when I form judgments again and again, I become mindful of what am I offering to this chitta karshini in me? What am I offering to my unconscious mind? What am I offering to my subconscious mind? If I have a low self-esteem about myself, it may not be on a conscious level, but when you look into the mirror, do you see a happy person? In a flash of a second, you will know that. Later on, you might convince yourself, you might smile at yourself in the mirror and all that. In a fraction of a moment, you will know the truth when you look across. And that is a reflection of the impressions of the chitta. So what kind of impressions am I planting? This being an altar of the Devi. That awakening happens in bits and pieces, happens in all of us in different stages. When that happens, you feel a sense of peace. Where does that sense of peace come from when you do sadhana? Why does Baba say, find eternal peace only in God? Why? Because the chitta becomes very pure and clean. Yeah, I know sometimes we don't progress much in a sense of a quote-unquote progress when we talk, okay, what next? We can't. It just doesn't allow me. That's how I am. So please bear with me here. Arjuna preferred Krishna. You just be with me. That's all I want, he said in the Mahabharata war. Right? Krishna said, I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to be of any use to you. I won't lift a single weapon. I won't do anything. I'll just be a charioteer. You still want me. So practical use is not there. And yet Arjuna said, I want Krishna. Many of us would say, yeah, if I was there, I would have said the same thing too. Oh, Duryodhana is a bad man, evil man. He was just after Krishna's army and all of that. What has that lesson got to do with us? How do I apply that to us? When I get emails or texts saying, I'm doing this sadhana, what is the use of all this sadhana? What is the use of chanting God's name? What is the use of staring at His form? We become Duryodhanas when we ask, what is the use? Because Duryodhana said, what is the use of just having Krishna? I want some results of having Krishna. If there is no result of having His presence, I don't want Him. I'm more for results. I want to use that for something. What do? We want to use God to make us rich, to make us healthy, to make us better. What is the use otherwise, we say? What is the use of being Baba's devotees? You are still dying like everybody else. You also fall sick like everybody else. What is the use of being a Baba devotee? What is the use of being a devotee of Devi? What is the use of having Shiva in your life and chanting Shiva, Shiva, Shiva? What has the Shiva given you? Nothing. If your heart feels that sense of peace that Arjuna had when he said, you, that's all I want. When we do sadhana as a means to get somewhere, then we become Duryodhanas. Because we are using God as a means to get to something. Even if it is God, we'll say, okay, when I do this mantra for 108 days, what am I going to get out of it? We forget the joy of chanting His name and being in the company of the divine, because that is what the lesson in Mahabharata teaches us. Just be in the company. How does that company help you, benefit you? I don't care. I love that company. That's all I want. I say this from my heart because we tasted this being with Baba. In one interview, he said, I have nothing to give you. I can't give you so much salary or anything. What will you stay and do here? You just have to wear your white clothes, eat in the canteen, and come morning, evening, sing bhajans. What will your parents say? What will your family say? Why are you so insistent of being with me? And we would say, we just want you. Being in that company is all that matters. If we can take that spirit and carry that into our sadhana, if the chitta, going back to chitta Krishna, if the chitta is filled with the Devi principle, with no expectations, there is no expectations from this. No expectations. Nothing to do, nowhere to go. Just be in the company of the divine. Enjoy the sadhana. Then you become Arjuna. Did Arjuna had a fantastic war? He lost his son. He lost his near and dear ones, right? All of that happens. Life doesn't change at all just because God is with you. But guess what? God is with you, and that's what matters. That's what matters. The 12 disciples of Jesus had Jesus with them, but was everything, nice and smooth and dandy for them? No. But they had Jesus with them. And that's what mattered. That's what mattered. So, in this attraction, in this minds of in chitta, when we see divinity in every aspect, we fill our mind with the divine. Then divinity takes over. And that's what matters. If I have to come back 1,000,000 more lives, but if I come in the consciousness of being in God, I don't mind 1,000,000 more lives, 1,000,000 more births. It doesn't matter as long as I am in the presence of the divine. And that's all that matters. So, with these thoughts, let us lose ourselves in the contemplation of the divine, in singing the name, not to get anywhere, but to enjoy the rasa Krishna, to enjoy the taste, the flavor of the divine energy that emanates from the sound in the combination of rhythm, melody, and immerse ourselves in that vibration, just for the joy of it.
Om Shri Matre Namaha. 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 श्री मात्रे नमः। ओम 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 श्री मात्रे नमः। अम्बा शंकरी परमेश्वरी शशि शेखरी अम्बा। अम्बा शंकरी परमेश्वरी शशि शेखरी अम्बा। सर्वेश्वरी जगदीश्वरी महेश्वरी अम्बा। सर्वेश्वरी जगदीश्वरी महेश्वरी अम्बा। अम्बा सुंदरी गुणमंजरी शिवशंकरी अम्बा। अम्बा सुंदरी गुणमंजरी शिवशंकरी अम्बा। कादंबरी श्वेतांबरी हरिसोदरी अम्बा। कादंबरी श्वेतांबरी हरिसोदरी अम्बा। हरिसोदरी अम्बा। अम्बा शंकरी परमेश्वरी शशि शेखरी अम्बा। ओम श्री मात्रे नमः। 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 अम्बा शंकरी परमेश्वरी शशि शेखरी अम्बा। अम्बा शंकरी परमेश्वरी शशि शेखरी अम्बा। सर्वेश्वरी जगदीश्वरी महेश्वरी अम्बा। सर्वेश्वरी जगदीश्वरी महेश्वरी अम्बा। अम्बा सुंदरी गुणमंजरी अम्बा। अम्बा सुंदरी गुणमंजरी शिवशंकरी अम्बा। कादंबरी श्वेतांबरी हरिसोदरी अम्बा। कादंबरी श्वेतांबरी हरिसोदरी अम्बा। ओम श्री मात्रे नमः। 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 ओम श्री समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु. May all the beings in all the worlds be happy. जय बोलो पवन सुत हनुमान की जय, सियावर रामचंद्र की जय, सतगुरु साईनाथ महाराज की जय. नमः पार्वती पतये हर हर महादेव. ओम शांति शांति शांति.